I think marketers should really get more serious. The time when we acquired Facebook fans for an iPad, I hope are over. And we're getting a bit more serious about what we want to do and what sort of KPIs we want to drive. So I think the time has really to become and take a step back and maybe do a bit of discovery and find out first how can social media help to really drive your business KPIs. For example, how can it drive test drives if you're an automotive brand? How can it drive claim consumption if you're selling drinks, for example, and so on and so forth. So hopefully 2014 we will see a lot more serious social media engagement rather than just vanity metrics.
You've stolen what I was going to say. I totally agree with that. Frustratingly, I was hoping to disagree with you. But I think absolutely right. It's going to get a lot more professional. It's going to get a lot more sophisticated over the next 12 to 18 months. I think critically, the main driver to that is going to be because it's going to start acting much more as an interface between audiences, other stakeholders and the brand itself. So instead of it being simply one of those channels whereby we're using it to send out our broadcast messages, we're actually using it as a genuinely interactive platform where we can learn about what our audiences need, how we can add value to those audiences, to communities, to society and to the world at large. And once we've learned how to do that, social media should, if used properly, then become a platform through which we can deliver a lot of that value even before people need to part with their money. So a brand that's doing this in a sensible kind of way ideally should be using social media to deliver elements of its value at its core before people actually need to get their wallets out and part with their cash. I think that inevitably these platforms are all businesses in themselves. The Facebooks, the Twitters, the Sina Weibos have incredibly sophisticated technology platforms behind them. They've got ongoing maintenance, they've got staff to pay. They've got costs, they have to fund it somehow, and it's not a charity. So inevitably, it's either going to be a situation whereby we do pay for those channels as distribution or as hosts for our conversations, if you look at it in a more sort of friendly and social kind of way, or we move to a more sort of internet style model where the whole thing is decentralized, but businesses themselves assume the cost of having servers and creating the various different platforms through which those conversations take place. I think in the short term, the advertising piece is inevitable. I think we should stop calling it advertising though. I think what it is it's using finances to ensure that you achieve the right degree of reach and of scale of the conversations. It's all very well having one-to-one conversations, but typically speaking, we've already got channels through which we can do that. Telemarketing, sadly, broken off a lot of the promise there by using it to spam people. The danger is that we could go the same way with social media unless we make it an open conversation. And I think that's the reason why we need to make sure that there is always that scale that the paid media piece allows us to achieve. Having said that, we shouldn't mistake the role of that particular paid piece. It's not there just to interrupt other people and to change the conversation to the one that we want to have. We just need to be using it to make sure that we achieve the right sort of scale and the volumes of conversations that make sure that we achieve those bits of mutual value that I was talking about before.
From a measurement perspective?
I think it's funny that you mentioned advertising because advertising ultimately, to me, it also means a form of amplification, but I wouldn't start with amplification before I'm actually sure that I have a really good message to deliver. And that really brings you to the first step, which is basically understanding what is a good message to deliver, what gets shared, what gets been reacted on, what really my audience seems to care about. If I have landed on that conclusion, then I think advertising is a wonderful way to amplify that message, because advertising is kind of like having almost like a second coming. Now it's possible, to trigger me to go inside a store when I'm 50 meters away from it, for example. Or there's multiple different ways how I could engage with a brand. But with great power comes also great responsibility. If you have a crappy message, then better not go out there. Or if you're not sure, then better make sure that you are sure. So that's I think the important part, is to take the first preliminary steps. Don't just jump on it. The media agencies especially, I think, have been coming from a very kind of like, you know, burst and pray that if it works side of strategy, where I think that time has come to an end. We need to be very specific about what we target the consumer with, and we need to make sure that we're not interrupting them, but we're actually adding some sort of meaning to their lives.
Yeah, I think what's really critical as well, we've got broadcast advertising channels that have been around for hundreds of years, if we think about it carefully. I think what's new now is that, you know, we can understand what people are saying. There's a fantastic quote from our own Nightingale, which is, "You can't learn anything with your mouth open." Brands are used to saying all the things they want to say, but they've never really invested enough money in understanding what people really want, and that classic Jobs quote of, "People don't know what they want, we need to show them." But by understanding broader parts of their lives and taking the time to listen to what people are saying within the social context, we can make better deductions as brands as to what will add value to them if they're not stating it explicitly. So I think from that perspective, the advertising piece, which is helping us to do the outbound part of our messaging, we need to make sure we're not suffering from what I might call commercial Tourette's, of just saying all the things that we want to talk about but not really doing it with any structure. We've got to get much better at having genuine conversations with people so that we learn what they need, and we can, as brands, do what we should do, which is to add that value that people are willing to pay for, but also to talk about and share.